Hello everyone. This chapter was like a power scaling buffet. There's not a single time that we cut away, that we transition in this chapter that doesn't lead to an attack. The chapter opens and there's a clash between Marco and Big Mom. Then we transition inside of the dome and it's Zoro using his Pondoho, his cannon. After that we go to Chopper's group and there's an explosion in the background, which I believe was caused by a poo. And then after that we go to Usopp and he's using Midoriboshi. Boom, boom, boom. Come and get your action fix this week. The title of this chapter is very smart, I thought, because it could be referencing two characters. It could have like a double meaning. The title could be referencing Tama, who appears by the end of this chapter, since her goal, her dream, is to become a bewitching kunoichi. We learned this during a small little flashback that we got between Tama and Ace, where Tama wanted Ace to take her out to sea with him, but Ace refused to take her along because she was too young. But he told her, if you become a bewitching kunoichi, when I come back to Wano, I will take you with me after that, as long as you become a kunoichi. So that's kind of the promise that Tama made to Ace and to herself there. However, the title could also be applied to Nami, because ever since we got into Wano and Kinemon gave the Straw Hats new outfits, if you remember, he gave Nami the outfit of a kunoichi. And Nami was at first kind of upset about it because the outfit was kind of revealing. But later on she got used to it. So the title could also be about Nami sort of renewing her vow of confidence in Luffy's dream to become king of the pirates.
Alright, so it looks like we're back with fan requests. This time Luffy is being taught by an owl, and Luffy is wearing a shirt that says Kabu, which fits his shirt perfectly because Kabutomushi is the name for Japanese rhinoceros beetles. So that's his shirt right there. We also see the Risky brothers there, or the Risugi Kyodai. Remember, Rizu in Japanese means squirrel, so that's why if you say like Rizuki, risky, you can kind of make the Japanese word for squirrel fit in the name. But regardless, it is my pleasant honor to remind you that those happy creatures that you see in today's cover page are dead, because Moria removed their shadows with Shadow Asgard by the end of Thriller Bark, and those shadows belong to the men in Lola's crew, so unless Moria comes back and reanimates those squirrels, they are pretty much dead.
We start off at the entrance of Onigashima with a clash between Marco and Big Mom, and while the fight was kind of cut short in a way, we do have some feats to look at.
Okay, so I first want to start talking about the homies, because I think they are a very interesting part of this whole thing. If you look at the first page, you'll see that Zeus is already checked out. He's not having any of this. He's very low energy. His tongue is sticking out. He has a band-aid on his face, and understandably so, because if you remember, back when Zeus was with Nami, he told Nami, if Big Mom gets a hold of me, she's gonna try and kill me. So Big Mom already beat Zeus up before this, and then Brook cut him in half as well. So you can understand why Zeus is pretty dull throughout all of this. Now the thing about this clash with Marco is that it's very clearly an elemental only clash, right? It's just purely elemental clash, and the reason for this is because if you remember back in Whole Cake Island, Luffy found out that hockey doesn't work on Prometheus. The only weaknesses that we've seen Prometheus have, well, actually Prometheus and Zeus have, are elemental based. For example, Brook was able to injure Prometheus because Brook uses ice, and Jinbei was able to counter Prometheus as well because he used the water from a river that was in the forest. So the weakness is elemental. That's why Marco is not using hockey in this scene, and that's why Marco has the upper hand. He has the elemental advantage when it comes to this clash, to the point where the damage that we see Marco deal to Prometheus in this scene is significantly more than the damage that Brook dealt, and more than the damage that Jinbei dealt.
So if you look at the panel where we see Perospero for the first time with his candy bow and arrow, in that panel you'll also find Prometheus looking like a fainted Pokemon. Like his eyes are X's, like he's on his back and stuff. This is the worst Prometheus has ever looked, and it's courtesy of Marco, so we gotta give Marco some credit there. That's a feat for Marco. Later on in the scene, Big Mom actually gets on Prometheus and Zeus, and the two of them seem to have enough energy to be able to carry her away, but they still look drained. I mean, their eyes are still X's and stuff. So again, like this is the worst I've seen those two homies look. And then by the end of the scene, we see that Big Mom is sort of flying towards a crowd of people that have been infected with the Ice Oni bullets. I don't want Big Mom to be infected by the ice because I feel like that's just another way of stalling her, from stopping her from getting into the action. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and it's like, okay, like, would she get infected? And I kind of came to the conclusion that she wouldn't, because first of all, she's kind of hovering over these people, like she's kind of flying over them. And then secondly, like, she has Prometheus there with her, so maybe Prometheus can do something against that ice. Then again, maybe Prometheus is just too weak right now to do anything against those Ice Oni zombies coming her way. And maybe that's why she gets infected in the long run. Maybe if she finds out who created the Ice Oni, maybe she'll get annoyed and get angry at Queen again. Because if you remember back in Udon, they kind of had like this fight over the Oshiruko. So maybe that gets brought up again. Or, and again, I don't want her to be bitten. I don't want her to get infected. But if she does, like, Chopper is probably going to save the day. Like, he's the one that will come up with the cure, and maybe that'll make, Big Mom friendly again. I don't want that to happen, though. It also can't be a coincidence that Marco is right there in front of the crowd, and that Marco just so happens to be a doctor that uses fire to heal people. So let me know down below, do you think that Big Mom and Marco will be overwhelmed by these Ice Oni coming their way? Do you think they'll be infected, or do you think they will be able to use their fire against them and therefore sort of temporarily put a stop to the disease spreading? We finally get to see Wanda's Sulong form in this, and if I'm being honest, I was expecting a bigger change in her appearance. Like, she looks very similar to her normal self, and that's the thing about Minx. Like, some Sulong forms, like, you change a lot. Like, for example, Inuarashi, like, he's so different in his Sulong form. I also thought Peckham's had a significant change in his appearance during Sulong form. But then you have characters like Wanda and Nekomamushi who don't really change all that much. So visually, I thought the team-up attack between Carrot and Wanda looked great. I like how each of them is using their own fighting style, and it just kind of crosses over by the end. And Carrot actually gives Pero a shank scar.
Then Oda highlights the importance of Pedro's sacrifice and how it was thanks to him that Luffy was able to escape Whole Cake. It reminds me of that statement from Oda where he said that after Wano, nothing will be the same for Luffy, and everything will change in terms of the journey that comes afterward. And I actually feel bad for Perorin, because what he's saying is technically the truth. He's like, you're blaming the wrong person, that guy blew himself up. So I am beginning to think that it's a bit unfair that he has to deal with a 2v1 in this case. And despite Wanda and Carrot Sulong, I do think that Marco and Big Mom steal the scene. Okay, now where does this leave us, folks, and what does it mean? Alright. I've always maintained that what makes a first Yonko Commander level character, right? The operational definition of a first Yonko Commander is their ability to either push back or temporarily stall an Admiral. If you don't believe me, you can go ahead and rewatch Marineford. Marco versus Kizaru, Kizaru gets pushed back. Marco versus Aokiji, Aokiji gets pushed back. Marco versus Akainu, Akainu gets stalled temporarily. And then, of course, Ben Beckman is able to temporarily stall Kizaru. Now, with that said, you could technically make the argument that what Marco is doing in this chapter is that he's temporarily stalling Big Mom. However, the problem with doing that is that the consequences of a first Yonko commander going up against an Admiral versus them going up against a Yonko are very different in degree of severity. So this is what Luffy did to Kaido while Kaido was drunk and while Kaido was in his weakest form. So Dragon Form Kaido, that's his weakest form. Luffy, around this time, is or was first Yonko Commander level. So this is what he's doing to Kaido. Again, Kaido was drunk here, and the consequences for Luffy doing this to Kaido were essentially Luffy getting one-shotted. Now in Marco's case, the consequences for him trying to stall Big Mom are him getting choke gripped. And it doesn't seem like Marco can do much of anything to free himself from that grip. Take away Wanda, Marco, and Perospero from that scene. What would have Marco been able to do by himself in that situation? Also, the quickness of how fast Big Mom was able to turn things around in her favor, despite Marco having the elemental advantage over her, is something that we have to consider as well. I mean, because Big Mom flips the script on him instantly. Instantly. So here's what we're going to do. Show me one panel. Just one panel. Wherever you can find it. Show me one panel of an Admiral being able to choke grip a first Yonko Commander level character as fast as she did in this chapter. Show it to me. You can't do it. And if you can't do it, it's because officially now I think the evidence points to Yonko being stronger than Admirals.
Now, even though this chapter clearly gives an edge to the Yonko over the Admirals, I'm obviously not including Akainu into this mix because Akainu is no longer an admiral. He's a fleet admiral. I don't know why a lot of people got stuck on Akainu being an admiral and that's all he is. But no, he's a fleet admiral. He should be stronger than admirals just by his rank. People bring up the topic of admirals versus Yonko, when in reality, I think the discussion that we should be having is how strong is a fleet admiral compared to a Yonko? So because of the evidence that we have now, I think it's very obvious that the power hierarchy goes as follows. There's first Yonko commander level, then admiral level, and then Yonko level. Of course, I also think it's very important to remember that the power gap between an admiral and a Yonko is a lot smaller than the power gap between a first Yonko commander and an admiral. Also, in the beginning of the chapter, Marco kind of hypes up Big Mom a little bit more because he says, like, I don't know what my role here is yet, but I know that you're very dangerous. Like, I know better than anyone the danger that you pose. So, he's kind of hyping up Big Mom. And then I'm just going to read you the dialogue that Big Mom has in the official translation as she's leaving Marco behind, because I think it's crucial. So Big Mom says, I don't have time for your little personal squabbles. Don't bring them up here on this battlefield. You hash them out. So that right there communicates disinterest in fighting Marco. It doesn't seem like she has any killing intent when it comes to Marco, which kind of goes along with what I said in the chapter review for 992, where they're kind of talking, but there's this very subtle, I think this subtext of respect for each other, and that actually goes along perfectly with a bit of dialogue that Pero has in the scene, where he says, Marco, there were times in the past where I wanted to kill you more than this. So the killing intent seems to be a bit low from Pero's end, and it also seems to be low from Big Mom's end, or pretty much non-existent. And then Big Mom says, look, Marco, if you want to kill me, you'll have to do it another time. I don't have the soul weapons to spare on you now. So notice how she's not vengeful about it. She's not saying, Marco, if you want to kill me, I'm going to kill you first or something like that. Or, Marco, I'm going to come back and kill you at a later time. She doesn't say that. She just says, if you want to come at me, like, just do it some other time, because right now I have to do this other thing. And she says, I don't have the soul weapons to spare. She doesn't say, I don't have enough. She doesn't say, I can't beat you. She just says, I don't have the souls to spare. Like a spare tire. Like when you think of a car, right? And you think of like your 4 tires, that's enough. You have enough tires, but you have a spare. So in other words, Big Mom is saying, like, I don't have extra soul weapons to deal with you. So it's an afterthought. It's not something like, yeah, this is, something that I can't do. No, it's like, I have my reserve, I have my energy, I know what I can do, I just don't have that spare soul energy that I could use on you. Because again, Marco isn't really a priority to her. And so it bears repeating that despite Marco not being a priority to her, despite Marco having the elemental advantage on her, look how quick she was able to turn things around and choke grip Marco.
We go inside the dome to 720 Pondoho! This is a Nitoryu attack, so it's Zoro just using 2 of his swords to try and hit Apu, and it's actually the same attack that he used back in the capital, in the Flower Capital, when he was trying to hit Orochi. And so of course we know that back then, Denjiro was able to block that attack fairly easily, whereas here Apu seems to be rather relieved that he didn't get hit by it. He's like, whew, that was close. Some of the Beast Pirates are asking Apu for help because they're very cold, and then Apu turns around and does something even colder to them, which is attacks them with one of his explosions. Scratch! Apu reveals that he uses tonfa to fight, which are basically like these handheld sticks that are used in melee combats and martial arts. They can be used to reinforce your back fist and your elbow strikes, as well as your punches, and as we see in the panel, they also offer great protection for your forearms. And so this is how Apu blocks Drake's and Zoro's attack, which is also very fitting because tonfa are believed to have originated in China. And so if you look at the SBS, where Oda reveals what nationality each of the supernova would be, Apu, according to Oda, would be Chinese.
Zoro's clashing with him. He tells Apu that he really wants to get up on the roof to help Kinemon and the other samurai. So in other words, he says, like, I don't have time for stag beetles. People want to downplay me, they want to hate on me all they want, but I just don't have time for stag beetle gifters. Zoro says he has his head in the game and that all of this is just a distraction. It's a delay from him getting up to the top.
Once again, Drake repeats that he's always hated Apu, and so I feel like that's been repeated enough times for it not to matter. I feel like we have to get an explanation for why it is that Drake hates Apu so much, in addition to what Apu is doing right now. I mean, technically, these two supernovas should be the ones that have the most history of working together under Kaido, so they must know something about each other that goes back to them joining Kaido during the time skip, because Drake challenged Kaido pretty early on, like actually even before the time skip, and then Apu, by the time Kaido landed where Kid was, Apu was already working for Kaido. So yeah, it just makes sense that they have a lot of history.
Now there's a piece of dialogue in this chapter from Queen that I think was intentionally placed there by Oda to create a flame war online. So Queen starts talking about Drake first, all right? Let's be very clear. He's first talking about Drake, then he talks about Zoro, and then he says it's always best to take out the number 2s and 3s quickly. So he's obviously referencing Drake and Zoro with the number 2s and 3s. And so I'm kind of curious, is Drake supposed to be the number 2, or is he supposed to be the number 3? Now, here's the thing, all right? Drake belongs to like 2 different groups. He belongs to the 11 Supernova, and he belongs to the Toby Robo. So maybe Queen is saying that Drake is either number 2 or number 3 within the hierarchy of the Toby Robo, or within the hierarchy of the Supernova. I think it's more likely that he's talking about Drake as a part of the Toby Robo, and maybe that's why he's calling him either number 2 or number 3 within that group. And then for Zoro being either number 2 or number 3, it just depends if Queen is actually taking Jinbei into consideration. Because if he's taking Jinbei into consideration, you can kind of make the argument that right now, because of a lack of feats post-time skip, then yeah, you know, maybe it goes Luffy, Jinbei, and Zoro. At least for the time being. Because I definitely think that during this arc, during his fight, post-Wano, Zoro will reclaim that number 2 spot, that number 2 position in the crew. If that's what Queen is referring to, because again, he could also be referring to Zoro as being number 2 already. So we don't know. It's vague enough to be bait. And I'm biting. Everybody's biting this. Who didn't bite? Unfortunately, though, right after Queen talks about the 2s and 3s is where the problems start if you happen to be both a power scaler and a Sanji fan. Because the way that Queen talks about it is he talks about the number 2s and the 3s, and then he mentions Sanji. Almost kind of like he's implying that Sanji isn't either a 2 or a 3. Queen says it's always best to deal with the 2s and the 3s early. And then there's Sanji. I read that and I was like, oh shoot. Oh man. I am not going to get paid enough to deal with this flame war. But how do you spin it? Like if you're a Sanji fan, how do you spin that? It's like by not having Sanji be included in the dialogue about the 2s and the 3s, it almost sounds like Oda is saying that Sanji is a 4. So I'm going to tell you what I think, right? Sanji is going to fight Queen. I think this chapter confirms it. If there was any doubt that Sanji would fight Queen, I think this chapter seals the deal. Because Queen, as it turns out, knows Judge. But even before that, there were enough subtle connections that pointed towards them, like, you know, having some kind of interaction. And now I think it's going to be a fight. So, for example, they're both infatuated with Komurasaki, right? They're both fans of Komurasaki. They're both blonde. Queen uses technology to fight. Sanji is from a family that is very high-tech oriented. Queen uses lipstick, and Sanji spent the time skip training in an Okama island. So there were enough connections between the two, and now it turns out that Queen knows Judge, so it's pretty much a done deal. They're gonna fight. Queen, second Yonko commander, versus Sanji. Now here's the biggest point that I want to make with this. If you've watched my reviews, you know that I've been making this point over and over again about Sanji's name, about the fact that there was some resistance there, about him not wanting to accept the Germa heritage that he has because he associates that with cruelty and evil. In this chapter, if you notice, okay, Queen calls out Drake and Zoro by name. He doesn't call Sanji out by name. He says Judge's son. So Queen is clearly underestimating Sanji, and all of that is going to change with Sanji fighting him. During that fight, I expect Sanji to be confronted with his Germa heritage because Queen knows Judge, and I also expect Queen to take back those words that he said in this chapter about not considering Sanji either a 2 or a 3. I can envision Queen like having a moment in the fight where he says, "Oh, I underestimated you, Vince Smoke," And then Sanji says, my name is Sanji. And that's how Sanji will be able to reclaim being one of the 2s and 3s. Okay? But he has to be confronted with the Germa thing first. It's just part of his character arc.
We know that Vegapunk, along with Judge, discovered the lineage factor, right? And so we also know that Vegapunk, according to Oda, Vegapunk is going to be the character that explains everything about devil fruits, right? He has the explanation about what they are, and all that stuff. So if Vegapunk worked with Judge, discovered the lineage factor, and if Queen knows who Judge is, it only makes sense that he has some scientific involvement with them because Queen is a biological engineer of sorts. We also know that the 10 numbers that are part of the Beast Pirates also came from Punk Hazard, and Punk Hazard used to be the workplace of Vegapunk and Caesar Clown. So there's just a bunch of connections now between these 4 characters, these 4 mad scientists. And so maybe that's why Orochi made the request to ZB0 to bring Vegapunk to Wano, because maybe Queen told him how crucial and how important Vegapunk is, and what he could do with his knowledge. In terms of it helping Queen develop new weapons and such. Turns out one of my predictions came true from the last review. I said that I really wanted Brook to be contaminated by the Ice Oni bullets, and in this chapter it turns out that he was. But it just didn't have the effect that I thought it would have on Brook. I wanted Brook to use that ice as a power-up and turn into a Oni ice demon creature. But Chopper gets it, he gets hit too, and so I think that the Ice Oni bullets are going to trigger an uncontrolled version of Monster Point. And it would actually be a stronger version of Monster Point because the Ice Oni bullets actually increase the victim's physical abilities. So this could even actually end up triggering Chopper's awakening. And another thing is that this is a good thing for Oda because he can use Chopper being frozen to stop him from revealing too much about the nature of the infection. So for example, we might get a scene very soon where Chopper figures out how to deal with the Ice Oni bullets and he's like, oh my gosh guys, I finally figured it out. I know what this...
I think it's kind of cool that at first Chopper didn't realize that he was freezing because he's a reindeer, so he has that extra protective layer of fur, and then he also grew up in a winter island, so he didn't really notice at first that he was freezing, unlike some of the other people that when they get hit, they immediately start yelling out. Also, Chopper thinks it's strange that the cold seems to be spreading from inside the body.
And so that actually brought up 3 things in my mind. The first thing that it brought up was Aokiji's double fruit power, and how he can essentially turn himself into ice by freezing his entire body from the inside out. And so if Smile Devil Fruits are defective Zoan-type Devil Fruits, right, then maybe these bullets have some defective Logia Devil Fruit attributes to them. Of course, the effect also reminded me a lot of Monet, and how Chopper was there back in Punk Hazard, and he saw what Monet could do with her snow. She was essentially freezing Nami, so maybe Chopper is getting Monet flashbacks in that scene. Whatever the root of it is, it has to be something that Chopper can connect to something that we've already seen in the story. And so because of that, I was also reminded a lot of Thriller Bark, because if you remember, Hogback said that they actually found Orz's body in the Land of Ice. And that's how Orz died, right? He died 500 years ago, frozen to death. And so we know very little, actually, of the Land of Ice, but considering the fact that it was Chopper the one who figured out that Orz had actually frozen to death by inspecting one of his wounds that had really bad frostbite on it, I think it's very possible that Queen used an extract of the thing that killed Orz as the main ingredient or the main component for his Ice Oni bullets. We then go to Midoriboshi, Usopp versus Ulti, and I think it's important to notice that even before we go to this scene, Usopp and Nami have already taken damage. They're both pretty roughed up. The only difference is that Usopp is still standing while Nami is on the floor. But regardless, I think this chapter gives us a new durability feat for both of them. Usopp's is crazy though, because even after taking damage off screen, he gets a hockeyed ulti headbutt. You can tell it's hockeyed up because of the black sparks, and after that, he's still conscious by the end of it.
And obviously the way that Oda draws Usopp's skull cracking in that X-ray panel is supposed to get us to think about his fight back in Alabasta versus Mr. Four. And the reason he wants us to think about that fight is because during that fight, that's when Usopp says that he believes that Luffy will be king of the pirates. So it's sort of like a connection to what Nami says in this chapter as well. So that's why I think he wanted Usopp to get his bones cracked, sort of trigger the memory in us to his Alabasta fight, and have it make sense to Nami's speech in this chapter. So he's kind of making a connection there between the two speeches that say the same thing.
You can tell this is pretty much a low diff fight for Ulti because Pepe says, "You don't really need my help. You're just pretending because you want me to save you." And then Usopp uses bamboo javelin. And if you look at that panel, Ulti actually seems to be holding one of the bamboos down. Like she's stopping one of those bamboos from sprouting. Because she can do that, like she's that strong. And then in the next panel, page 1 actually chomps one of the sticks.
But again, I do have to give credit to both Nami and Usopp because they had already taken damage before we got to them. So like Usopp, before Ulti headbutts him, Usopp says something like, "Not again." So maybe, perhaps Usopp had already taken a hockey headbutt from Ulti. And maybe Nami did as well, because Nami also says, "If you hit me again," to Ulti. So, man, like their durability has increased tremendously. It kind of reminds me of that speech that Zoro has in Enies Lobby where Sogeking goes missing and then Nami says, "We have to go find him." And then Zoro says like, "Don't worry about it. All of us, we've survived like very intense life and death situations." And so did he. So like all of us in the crew became stronger throughout this journey without even noticing. Now, the thing about Nami saying that she believes that Luffy will be the king of the pirates is that she technically already said it back in Whole Cake Island when her and Luffy were up against Cracker. Technically, I guess this is the first Straw Hat to say the same thing twice about Luffy's dream. Although, well, I guess if you count Zoro, like, after he lost against Mihawk, when he like picks up his sword and he says like, "I promise you I will never lose again. Is that okay? Kaizoku! Is that okay, Pirate King?" or something like that. And then his moment in Thriller Bark when he does say that to Kuma, like Luffy will be the man to become king of the pirates. Maybe if you count Zoro, that's him saying it twice, but it's not as verbatim as Nami says it, because Nami literally says Luffy will be the Pirate King. So I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything, that she's the first Straw Hat to say that twice. I don't know if I'm supposed to be getting like some Luffy x Nami vibes. What is it? Like Luna? That's what the ship is called, right? Luna? So Nami has said it twice already, and Robin hasn't even said it once. That gets me to think that Oda has a plan in mind for when Robin says it. I think it's going to be a very tense, very emotional moment. Because it's Robin, and Robin isn't really that emotional unless some like really bad stuff is going down. So I think Oda has a plan for Robin for when she says it. Some fans believe that she's going to say it if she gets kidnapped by Blackbeard, Blackbeard getting his hands on her so that she can read the poneglyphs for him and he can get to Laugh Tale, and that Robin will refuse and she will say, "Luffy will be the Pirate King. He will be the one to get to Laugh Tale before you." Or something to that effect. Although, to be honest, I'd rather not think about that sort of stuff because I like Robin way too much to just picture her being kidnapped or being in any sort of danger. Even though it was kind of technically foreshadowed in Zou, because I believe it was either Nekomamushi or Inuarashi saying, like, you have an interpreter, you have a translator in your crew. She's very valuable because she can read the poneglyphs, and people are going to try and take her from you. So yeah, that was a moment in Zou. It got foreshadowed, but we'll see what happens.
Tama shows up with Kumachio to save the day, and I think her entrance here pretty much confirms that she was the one who was following Jinbei and Robin all those chapters ago. I think it was chapter 979. And so this kind of makes the Usopp and Tama team up prediction a little bit more likely, which basically states that Usopp is going to be using Otama's Kibidango ability as ammo, and he's going to be shooting those Kibidango at some of the gifters, and so that way Tama can take control of some of Kaido's army. Now, it's important to remember that Tama says herself that the effects of her Devil Fruit power only work on animals and not humans. The only reason it works on gifters is because they are half animal. So it's not like her ability would work on Kaido, King, Queen, or Jack, because those characters are human that have a Devil Fruit power. She also wouldn't be able to control the Tobiropo, because that would just make Tama way too broken.
So yeah, Tama's going to be targeting gifters from now on. And that's how the chapter ends. I thought the chapter was great, much better than the previous chapter. Not just because of the action, but because of the progression. Like, this chapter actually moved the story along. There's much more development happening in this and much less chicken butt-faced men. Although, to be honest, I did enjoy that upside-down panda gifter that Jinbei sends flying, just because you can't tell if the panda is in the crotch region or if the man is in the crotch region of the panda. Thanks a bunch for watching, guys. Stay safe, take care of yourselves, comment down below with your thoughts. If you like the video, you know what to do. Take care. I said that already. Bye.